So in this segment, we're going to be talking about the Tories' fear around Liz Truss. She'll be She'll be Boris Johnson without the charm, and I agree with that. I think she will indeed be that. She has no real charm. She's very goofy. I know Boris Johnson's a bit goofy, but she's kind of she's more like an embarrassing cringe kind of goofy. It's hard to explain. It's the whole pork markets thing and the imports of cheese and exports of apples. It's just, it's hard to explain. It really is. Maybe it's misogyny, I don't know, but she's a different kind of goofy, a less likeable kind. Cringe. With just 2 weeks to go before Truss is expected to be crowned, obviously when this article was written, she'll be crowned on Monday. She might be crowned by the time you watch this video, actually. A large number of Conservative MPs are serious about jitters, have serious jitters about their futures this weekend. One reason is that while a clear majority of the 150,000 or so members, we don't know officially how many members there are because the Tories are very stum on that, it might be like 10 people. 150,000 or so members of the Tory party will have the ultimate say in deciding the next PM, and let's not forget the majority of MPs backed Rishi Sunak, and Liz Truss only just about made it onto that ballot, of the top two. So it's clear that the Tory MPs don't have a lot of faith in her. Maybe they would have preferred Penny Mordaunt. Voters out in the country seem distinctly unimpressed by the prospect of the Foreign Secretary moving into number 10. Current polling trends, the wider electorate as opposed to the tiny Tory selectorate, suggest her stay there could be even shorter than that of the most recently ousted predecessor, which is true. She might be in there for, less than 2 years, potentially? It's quite worrying that, says a former minister, members are going one way with Liz and the country at large the other. This weekend's poll by Opinion for the Observer gives Labour its biggest lead in many months. It's almost 20 points. Genuinely, it's almost 20 points. 2 weeks ago, Truss had a 1 point lead over Starmer in the Best PM stakes. Today, she's 8 points behind him, obviously at the time of polling. Michael Gove joined the senior Conservatives, such as Dominic Raab and Michael Howard, in denouncing Truss's core economic policy as a holiday from reality. I'm not too familiar with Michael Howard. I think he sounds like a Tory from the 90s. But Dominic Raab is obviously fairly senior, a gaff machine himself, who only a few years ago learnt about the Dover-Calais crossing, or how important it is for us. But Michael Gove, as goofy and powder-ridden as the man might be, he's still a big player in the Tory party. Gove, he and Raab appear to believe that Truss has catastrophically failed to grasp both the extent of the cost of living crisis and the dire political consequences of her party of inaction to address it. And let's not forget, people's mortgages are going up, the cost of living is going up dramatically. If you're not going to solve it, as we go into a recession, it could end up for the Tories like it did for John Major, very badly. Gove said in an article for The Times that the answer to the cost of living crisis cannot be simply to reject further handouts and tax cuts. The fact that they're framing it as handouts, like these are benefits, these are, things that the government should hand out. This is taxpayers' money being redistributed. That's how it should be framed for a start, and you have to do this to keep the economy going. There's a reason why the furlough scheme worked. Without it, we'd have been screwed. His attack is milder than Raab's attack on her economic policy, as Raab calling it electoral suicide by the looks of it, a damning condemnation. So you got Michael Gove saying, the answer to the cost of living crisis, you can't just simply reject, handouts and things like that. And you've got Dominic Raab saying it's an electoral suicide note. That's crazy. The Liberal Democrats have formed a new Truss attack unit, believing they can repeat a recent string of by-election victories. I think the problem the Lib Dems will face is funding and resources. Winning a by-election is a lot easier than winning a lot of seats in the general election. That's where you need a lot of coordination and logistics. And you have to figure out which seats you think you can actually win. The Lib Dems believing they can repeat a string of by-election victories over Tories in scores of blue wall seats at the next general election in those constituencies where they are the main challenges to the Conservatives. Should be interesting to see if the Lib Dems can do damage in the south into the Tory heartlands and Labour can kind of take back the north. It's going to put the Tories in a very, very weak spot. Notably, in many of these seats, including Raab's in Esher and Walton, where the Deputy PM had a majority of just 2,743 over the Lib Dems in 2019, and that could swing. Dominic Raab, I don't think he's that popular. The incumbent MPs are coming out in support of Sunak, not Truss, because I think it's weird, because you think Truss would, her rhetoric would appeal more to the Tory heartlands, who are seen as kind of wealthier Southerners, for example, but apparently, that might not be the case, or at least the people backing Sunak might not think that's the case. The new Lib Dem unit has already begun drafting Truss attack ads for the distribution in these areas, focusing on her failure to help people with soaring energy bills and blue-on-blue clashes in the leadership contest. I think focusing on the blue-on-blue clashes is fine. I think you've got to give her a couple of months before you attack her in action, because otherwise you're going to look a bit stupid, because people are going to be like, she's only been in the job for 2 minutes, give her a bit of time at least. Especially because she's got to come up with a budget. That's probably the best time to attack her, as soon as that budget's done. The Lib Dems believe Liberal Tories will also dislike Truss's criticisms of woke civil servants. Her conversation to the benefits of Brexit have been having been a Remainer at the 2016 referendum, and I wonder how many Tories that are actually left that really care about Brexit. The Remainer Tories who really care about us leaving the EU. I wonder how important kind of Brexit is to them in that sense. Parts of the country where the Lib Dems attack unit will focus are the home counties, Surrey, Sussex, Buckinghamshire, Hertfordshire and Kent, as well as seats further afield in Devon and Shropshire. And if I were them, I'd really be attacking Kent, because I think what the Tories have done in Kent is a massive shambles, especially to that kind of Dover constituency. I think it's Dover plus one other area. I'd really be attacking that constituency, because their MP's a joke for a start. She's an absolute joke. And also the fact that they've absolutely ruined that whole area. There's massive traffic jams there. It stinks of human waste, because people are defecating in the kind of laybys, because there's nowhere else to go. It's an absolute shambles. And if the Lib Dems can win that, that's a massive coup. I mean, imagine, right, you're in the constituency of Dover, right, and you vote Tory. How stupid must you be? Organisations backing cooperation between progressive parties to oust the Tories sense that Truss offers real opportunities. Neil Lawson, spokesman for the Win as One campaign, which encourages progressive alliances on the left, said many Tory seats in the blue wall are on a knife edge, and a right-wing Truss leadership could push them over the edge. And I would love to see Labour kind of pull back away from those Tory heartlands and push more resources into the seats they can actually win. And the Lib Dems doing the same, kind of pulling out resources away from kind of Labour Tory seats, Labour versus Tory seats, and pushing that more into the south where they can really do some damage. Among more liberal, often Remainer, One Nation Tories, how many One Nation Tories are actually left? Honestly, who are now backing Sunak, there are two remaining sources of hope. The Sunak camp seems sincerely to believe that the evidence from the ground shows the race to be far tighter than these polls of members suggest. I'd be amazed if Sunak somehow pulls it back, really would do, because he's tried to run a campaign of being more closer to reality, and it's just not worked. One cabinet minister backing Sunak said he believed the former chancellor still had a 1 in 3 chance of winning, and that the trend was clearly in Sunak's direction. A 1 in 3 chance is very high. The other hope is that if Truss does win, she will dump much of the agenda outlined in her campaign. I mean, if she does that, I don't think the ERG are going to be very happy. Neither will the members. And cast aside the right-wing supporters she is said to be considering appointing to high position. So essentially it's a bait and switch, and I don't think that's going to go down too well in the party. A former cabinet minister who's backing Sunak said the test would be what Truss does when she gets into Downing Street, not what she has said on the campaign trail. The issue is that, when it comes to Boris Johnson offered, I think, absolute loyalty to his cabinet ministers, and I think that his cabinet ministers offered him the same. So for Truss to pull out a bait and switch, if she did promise people ministerial positions, I don't think will go down too well. Now, this person saying if she carries on with the full-on culture wars and the anti-woke stuff as well as the economic stuff, she will just come across as Boris without the charm, he said. Then she will turn off people in the blue wall. If she appoints Nadine Dorries and John Redwood to top jobs, will just drift away. I mean, keeping Nadine Dorries as head of, culture and whatever, I think she, if I was looking at it from a Tory perspective, she's a gaff machine, but, she is loyal to a fault. She's genuinely loyal to a fault. The sensible thing to do is what most successful US presidents have done. This is quite interesting analysis here from the senior Tory, which is to campaign for your base and then govern from the centre. So what you do is you go really radical to the base and then you pivot back to the centre. That's something, Joe Biden, I think Joe Biden kind of did it. I think Obama did it as well. Typically that's the kind of Republican model as well, is you go quite right-wing in the primaries and then you kind of pivot back towards the centre. Trump is obviously an anomaly from that because the man's a lunatic. She would be very well advised to do that. The trouble is no one seems to know whether she will, and that's the worry. And I don't think she will, because I think she will be very controlled by the ERG. The ERG are the ones who pushed her, they're the ones who made her kind of, I think, who she is. At least kind of the most recent version of it. Liz Truss changes her mind all the time, but if if the ERG keep hold of it, it'll be an absolute disaster for a couple of years for us, but then maybe Labour can actually win, or we can hope for a hung parliament with maybe a coalition government. But I don't know what the future's going to be. No one does, unless you've got a crystal ball, like a good one. But it's clear the Tories are very concerned about kind of what Liz Truss is going to do next. I'm quite concerned as well, from a person who actually lives in this hellhole. But yeah, genuine concern here. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can. And hopefully I will see you in the next one.